We are recording there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. My name is Mike Peterson. I'm the mayor of City Cottonwood Heights. It's Tuesday, March 2nd. It's 6:06. We're a couple minutes late. I apologize. This is the business meeting for the Community Development Renewal Agency for the City of Cottonwood Heights. This is, again, our business meeting, and we do have special guest with us today, Chris McCandless with Canyon Center Capital LLC. And I'm going to turn it over to Tim immediately to introduce our discussion tonight.
Mayor, I think you may need to read that, do the written determination.
Again?
I'm sorry, but you probably need to.
Yeah, I do have it right here. Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, this meeting again is held virtually, and therefore we need to qualify for us to do that by reading this determination. It says, pursuant to Utah Code annotated 52-42074, the city's mayor, as the chair of the city council and of the Community Development and Renewal Agency, hereby determines that concluding or conducting the meetings of these bodies on this date at an anchor location presents a substantial risk in health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. It is well recognized that the global pandemic currently exists related to COVID-19 coronavirus, which has the potential to overwhelm Utah's healthcare system. Therefore, due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. Therefore, this meeting is held virtually, and I will now turn over to Tim, our city manager, to introduce the Canyon Center development discussion.
Okay, I will be very brief here, but we have Chris McCandless here. He has met with Mike Johnson and myself about a proposal to amend his development agreement. And so he's going to present that to you tonight. Right tonight, there's no decision on that amendment of the development agreement because you don't have that in front of you at this time. But we've asked him to come and present what he is proposing, and then we need direction from the CDRA board on moving forward or not with that amendment to the development agreement. So that's what we're asking, is for your direction. So there's no formal decision, just direction, and I'll turn it over to Chris. We have, Chris, fairly limited time, so 15-20 minutes, and then we'll definitely have questions and that as well.
One point of clarification, that we don't have the authority, do we, to do this without the approval of all the taxing entities?
Yeah. As far as you're absolutely correct. I'm glad that you brought that up. We will need to go back to all of the taxing entities if we move forward on this. We've already talked to Chris about that, but we wanted this to be in front of you first to get your thoughts related to this proposal. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, Chris. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Mayor. So, hey, Mike, I can do the screen share if you want. I've got all the documents, and so if I can, I'm going to go straight to that document and share it. I guess and everybody can see that. And I got to make it full screen mode so I can actually, I love these things because it tells me what I need to do. So, going back a little bit in history, oops, I got to go way back up I got the end of the presentation, and I'm dyslexic, but not that bad. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a history for the last year where we've been on the project. And there we go. Okay, so November 2019, this is what the project looked like a little over a year ago. You can see the 8 Settlers restaurants coming out of the ground. Parking structure is completed, and most of the site work's been done. You can see the rock that's gone on the garage. No landscaping or anything's done. That wall that we decided to do, I think, looks considerably better and really makes the project and the office pad site work quite a bit better as well. And then we did a lot of the grading. We've left you guys a bunch of rocks for landscaping on the park. We think they're pretty cool. I try to keep people from stealing them, but it's difficult. People want those granite rocks pretty badly, and they just show up and take them because they think they're surplus. Some of the, of course, the access ways, and then as we finished it up, the hotel guys got started, I don't know, about a year, a little over a year ago, along with the restaurant. You can see the restaurant's done. I hope you guys have been up there and seen it and eaten in it. It really is an exciting restaurant. I think they're doing really, really well given the given the COVID concerns that we have today. The hotel, I think, is going to open up in March, and you guys might know better than I do. There's a little, the space underneath here, which is Unit 2E, will probably be a restaurant out of San Diego, Italian food, and on the other side, the corn shell has been approved, and we're going to start on that probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Finish up the plaza when we get that stuff done. All the landscaping's been finished. I love the way that the distillery looks right now. And this was taken a few weeks ago, and now it's quite a bit more complete. Pretty exciting. And so one of the things that I think you should know is that we had the office podium under contract to sell. The individual or the group that we had sold it to couldn't perform, and you know, through all of the conversations, and I'm not going to throw anybody at all ever under the bus, but it took us about a year and a half to get the right to do something with the podium back. We actually filed a lawsuit and then settled it. But we now have it back. I've had it back for about 6 to 9 months and been diligently trying to figure out what to do with it, including trying to build an office building and lease the space. The challenge is, and this is the building that was approved once upon a time with that conditional use permit, and part of our agreement with the previous buyers that we got to keep all of his work because I really thought that they did nice work, and that's been approved by the city with a conditional use permit. Our challenge is because of COVID and people wanting to work from home. One of the quotes that I've heard recently is the office market is dead. We own a couple of buildings elsewhere, and we don't think it's dead, but it's extraordinarily difficult. Rates are coming down, costs are going up, and that makes it difficult to continue to pursue an office building instead of perhaps something else. So what we wanted to do is ask you to consider and approve of a modification to the office building. This lower picture here is an office building of all levels, and you can see it's a little higher than the hotel, so if you wanted to get an elevational perspective, that's what you can look at. This building here would be an office on the main level and then 3 levels of luxury condominiums. And you can see that the building now, because a floor-to-ceiling height in a residential structure is 11 feet versus 15 feet in an office building, and so we actually shrank the building, but not by square footage, but by height. And I think one of the big concerns that we all had, the community had, was the actual height of the building, and so by making a conversion of 1 level of office on the main floor and then the rest of the levels being condominiums, it works pretty well from that perspective. I want to run you through some of the things that, some of those changes. This is the first level or the main level of the building and would stay office. We expect it'll be condominiumized.
Sorry, Chris. I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you blow that up just a teeny bit? I'm having a hard time seeing it. Just a little.
But it may screw it up, Christine.
Oh, thank you.
Is that better?
It was better. Yeah, that's great.
Okay. I don't know if I'm smart enough to continue figuring out how to show those slides, but I'll try really hard. So this is the main level of the building, and it's actually exactly what was previously approved. There's the plaza that runs out to Wasatch Boulevard, and the new walls that are in have changed a little bit from this design. use that block instead of a concrete wall. We're not real fans of concrete. You can see the portico for the entry to the building. That stays exactly the same. When you convert it, and try this, I did, that's kind of cool. When you convert it into condominiums, these would be the types of condominiums that would be built. And it would be on the next level up. We think that people will need storage associated with their condominiums. The exterior of the building would stay the same, although we would shrink the walls in these areas to give them, say that again. So that would give them patios from which to, they'd be staggering views. It would be actually pretty cool. The next levels up stay about the same. Yep, and until you get to the rooftop area, which would actually be very close to the same as to what was previously approved. We like the rooftop gardens. We think it's a benefit for both the office and the residential units. It says amenity in a clubhouse. It's place, basically a meeting place for people to gather and then utilize the rooftop garden. And all of this was previously approved by the city in the conditional use permit associated when it was all office. This is what it looks like from a cutaway. I'm really proud of the parking structure because it's done, and you really don't know it's there, and that's kind of that was the objective. It's a pretty big hole in the ground. First level's all office, and then these levels are all residential units, have elevators and lobbies, and then the rooftop garden has a trellis feature and the same outdoor fireplace that we've talked about for years and years and years. The only difference is it would be residential by comparison to office use. So Tim asked us to come up with, okay, so what, oh, by the way, the garage, the parking, if we did this, we have 274 parking stalls for use by the office. We don't need anywhere near that many parking stalls for a residential structure. Now, most of the residential uses would be on the third level of the parking structure, which is exclusive to that of that particular building. And we believe that the residential people could park there. We'd like to make one change and add 6 parking stalls along this wall so that we could have everybody in the building have 2 parking stalls. This then becomes exclusive to the residential units, and then of course there's public parking out front and on the second level and the first level. We'd want to redo some of the shared parking because we don't think that we need that much parking. Perhaps we can increase then the public parking in the garage as the need continues to manifest itself. So the questions that Tim asked us to do was to come up with, well, what happens to first the traffic and second the tax increment, because residential's assessed at a different level. So we hired again, Hills Engineering to come up with his memorandum and said, what's going to happen if we do this? And he anticipated that the 570 stalls that are there for the project would be more than adequate to require the 381 stalls that are needed for the project with the modifications. So, and the second question that we asked him was, would it overwhelm or change things dramatically so that it would overwhelm some of the street surfaces? And he said, no, absolutely not. And this is the summary from that report, and I can make that available to all of you guys. I've given it to Mike and Tim already, and in its entirety. The second document that we did was we asked LIRB, or Jason Birmingham with Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham, to do an amendment to their tax increment study. And the tax increment study, our question was, based upon what was approved in 2018, how much money are we going to have in tax increment by comparison if you make the change to residential uses in its current environment? I mean, the 8 Settlers restaurant is considerably bigger than we'd anticipated. The hotel is quite a bit nicer than we'd expected. I will have a ribbon cutting ceremony for the hotel and have you guys come tour it. It's really spectacular. And they've done a really good job. The folks that built it are just detail oriented and in the extreme. And so we're pleased with what they've got. But in the end, with that conversion of 3 levels of residential, it creates, by comparison to the 2018 numbers that was approved by the RDA board, an additional $3.3 million in tax increment. So we actually are going to be making more money than anticipated, even with the modification. So in closing, I think the biggest challenge we've got is if we stick with an office building, quite frankly, I think it'll be somewhere between 5 and 10 years before we get anything done. We've had a lot of people. I've had some plastic surgeons out of Hollywood, California come up and take a look at it. They wanted to do something really special, but in the end they backed away. I've had an awful lot of people looking at it. The challenge is it costs a bunch to build it, and I can't rent the building for what it costs us to build it. And I think that with the influx of additional office space coming available from subleases from people that are downsizing as a result of the COVID implications to the office market, it's going to be a long time before we can build the building. And then I don't know even, it's just an unknown. And so we'll keep working on it if you guys decide not to do this, but we think having something there now, and I think the community would prefer to have residential ownership versus something else. But I like the lower heights, and so it creates that additional parking for others, decreases that height as mentioned, and gives us more TIF than we originally projected. So with that, I'd hope you'd support this concept. I'm not fond of the idea because I get to go back to all the taxing entities and go through that process. And I know that's going to be a burden on the city as well, but we'd appreciate the support if that could be, if that would be arranged. Anyway, I'd open it up for questions, and thank you.
Did you run a budget? What happens if there is no office building? How does that affect the overall project budget?
Well, I can go back to that. So if we just left it as a concrete slab, Councilman,
Right, for 10 years, like you suggested.
yeah, that would be I think I might be able to draw that conclusion here. All office, the office, nope, maybe I can't. Multi-phase 1, phase 2. I mean, there's the taxes. This is the all office assumption from 2018. $17,286,000 worth of value, and that won't exist for 5 to 10 years. I expect the market will recover someday. I don't want to be a doomsdayer. And so whatever that amount of, and I have that in the report, Scott, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of that in detail. This is just a summary from that report. I didn't think you guys would want me to go through the whole thing. And
No,
so,
it looks like it's about a quarter to a third of the tax increment funding, and that obviously would have a long-term impact on the overall budget.
yeah, it would hurt us all. That's for sure.
So Chris, are these proposed condominiums, are they meant to be owner occupied, or is there, obviously I would have a question if they're become short-term rental type things. So what's the design, what's the expectation?
So we have an offer from an individual who wants to do that, build those condominiums. He's aware of a restriction on those units that only 10 could be used for any type of rental. And so the hotel, when they purchased the property, had us incorporate a deed restriction on the office building. So they're restricted considerably to not be able to be short-term rentals, Mayor.
A question for Tim or Mike. do any of our city statutes or codes with respect to affordable housing impact anything like this?
So this area wasn't created, or the CDA area was not created with the affordable housing component in it.
Okay.
And I don't believe, Mike, you can address the zoning. I don't believe there's a requirement with this site.
No, this is not PDD. This is just our mixed use ordinance.
Yeah, okay. I assume that was the case, but I just wanted to make sure. Questions from the council?
Chris, I have a quick question. You mentioned that obviously the office space was going to use more parking, but you think our net extra space on the weekends wouldn't be affected, being that businesses probably wouldn't be there on weekends, but residents would be?
So the preliminary structure that we've come up with, Councilman Peterson, is that I think there'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 additional stalls available. But as part of this process, we'd want to go through, I'd like to take a look at all of the uses that are there, and just like the tax increment, perhaps restructure that and restructure that shared parking plan to the extent that we could increase the number of parking stalls for the public. And that's something I haven't really dug into, but that would be a great option to make it better than it is. But no, we wouldn't impact any of the existing parking stalls that are allocated towards the public on weekends, evenings, and holidays.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make that clear, just to make sure I understood that correctly.
The location wise, it seems like maybe parking could be a potential option there.
I definitely like the idea of a shorter building. And that definitely applies. Shane, I hope it's appropriate. I mean, you spent years on this project. Any concerns or questions from legalities because of all the I dotting and T crossing for those years of putting that together?
I will do whatever is asked of me, remembering that I was a young man when this thing started.
Yes.
I hope to get it done before I die. Yeah.
All right. Tim, what's our next step?
So our next step would be, we would work with Chris. He would have the drafts put together of the redevelopment agreement with these changes. We'd bring that to you, but also we would need to go to the taxing entities and renegotiate the interlocal agreements. And so if the council is comfortable with, if the CDRA board is comfortable with us moving in that direction, that's what we will do.
Council, would you like further discussions and a follow-up meeting? Obviously, we're a little bit short of time tonight. I want to give you all the time you need to understand it so that we vet it appropriately. Question?
The $3 million you were talking about additional TIF, that's a gross number over the life of the project, correct? It's not or is that 3 million of the, because I think the total TIF over the when it was net present valued was about 14 or 15 million dollars. Is it $3 million on top of that 14 or 15, or is it a different number?
Yep, that's correct. So the TIF that was estimated in 2018 and then approved by the CDRA board with the modifications that we've already undertaken and the modification of the residential office units, it would be an increase over the 14 million by 3.3 million.
So close to 20%. Did you say it was 18? Did I hear that, or did I mishear?
I think it's not quite 20, but I failed math 3 times at Brighton High School, so I wouldn't take my word for it. And I'm not.
That certainly opens up a lot of potential improvements that could be done around there. Obviously, it could potentially make some of your negotiations with the other entities also a little more complex. But overall, I asked the question about what happens if you don't do it, if you ran a pro forma pro forma budget on keeping in an office building with, a 3, 5, 7 year delay build, how that impacts the budget as well. I think that would be informative for some of the other entities as well.
Good point.
And I'll be honest, I think, even with the current development plan, parking is always been a debate and question. So I'd like to understand from, I guess, staff as to the parking status, not the parking spaces, but the traffic, I guess, more than parking. Does this impact traffic at all? I know the local residents there in that area have had ongoing questions. Has that been vetted and reviewed?
So Mayor, part of this would be a required amendment to the conditional use permit. So we would require the full updated traffic study, planning commission public hearing and decision
Okay.
before final approval by the CDRA.
Okay.
Well,
I guess, sorry.
Quick question. Has staff already reviewed the numbers? Since Chris is not a math expert, did we already second check that?
Yeah, we have gone over the numbers and understand what he's proposing. As this comes forward to the CDRA board and the taxing entities, all of that will be outlined, including the multi-year projections of tax increment financing based on the reports. So that will be before you reviewing the specifics of that. But yes, we have reviewed what he shows with the valuations, what that does on the impact of TIF over time. And we think it's workable based on what he's provided, but you'll have the opportunity to see that.
I'm comfortable moving forward.
Christine, you had a question?
I do, and it looks like I'm here in City Hall, but it's saying that my internet is unstable. So can you hear me okay?
You freeze, but you're on right now. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of questions I have in terms of the way the model looks. Is there a way that Chris, you or Birmingham could create the model that basically shows what the CapEx is, and then break it down? I think you did this before, but just so we're on the same page, break it down by taxing entity, so we could see. I think you did that the last time, but then take the old, what's approved, and the new, so we could see it side by side. I think that's what you did before, but it's the summary you had there. I couldn't follow it that well, so it'd be nice to.
Yeah, I'll make sure that happens, Christine.
Okay, and then I was talking to Tim about this. I don't know what the council thinks, but when I do these tax increment financing projects, I usually enter into a cost recovery agreement with an entity like ours, and so that the developer will then end up paying for some of our legal and the Birmingham, the analysis that's done. I don't know if the rest of the council would agree with that, but I think it's helpful when the developer who's asking for the tax increment actually bears the cost of that request, so that the city doesn't bear the costs of creating those legal documents and the models, et cetera. So I would mention that to something that I would be requesting of you, Chris, and your team. So thank you.
Chris, Councilman McHale, we would be glad to do that. I think we did it last time to a large extent, and don't have a problem with that at all. I would ask the same thing as a councilman if I was in the seat. So.
No, and I asked the same question to Tim yesterday, is that there's obviously an expense. Obviously, some of it may be in kind as far as time, but there is definitely a cost of proceeding. So coming to some understanding of that would be definitely appropriate without question in my mind. Yeah. So Tim, what's our next step again for us then?
If the direction is to move forward with this, we will come back to you with the full proposal for the amendment of the development agreement, and we'll also be going to the taxing entities as well with this.
So do you come back to us with a full development agreement so we can look at those? Like Christine has some questions on some of the analysis or traffic. Can we see that before we proceed with all the entities?
Sure. Yes. And that will be the next step, is get all the documents or get the information prepared, bring it to the board, and you can vet it and look through it and give input, and then we would move to the entities with negotiating with the interlocal agreements, and then have you provide a final decision as well.
So what I'm hearing is that we'll move forward conceptually, subject to review of those documents and reports and finances and traffic and things. Then from there, going to the different entities. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, one last question, because I can see
Yeah.
some local residents that are attendees of this call. So before, you sent us a list of sort of the reports that you're expecting to share with us before, so we can make sure, because I know the parking obviously, as the mayor indicated, is a huge issue.
Traffic is the big one.
Traffic, parking, obviously the tax increment model. I mean, those are just the three of the big ones, but, and with the parking, it'd be interesting to compare as to what was there before and what is going to be there now, and how it's been being utilized currently, how access to buses are, just, more broadly, so we can, if that's okay, Tim.
Yeah, and we need to, as a council, feel comfortable once that comes to us, that vetting and that information. Yeah, and I know there's residents who I've talked to this week who are aware of today's discussion and will be monitoring us closely, and they should be. So,
yeah,
Mike?
Mayor, and I will just say, obviously, this is not a quick process. There's going to be some months that are going to go by as we work on the plans, obviously, that need to be brought for you, but obviously going through the process with the taxing entities is not a short process. And Chris knows that. When I talked to him, I wanted to make sure he recognized that was going to be the case, and he does. He's been through this before, of course.
Well, with the planning commission and conditional use permit, but you got to start somewhere. So, Chris, appreciate your joining us this evening and sharing with us those concepts. And I hear great things about the restaurant. And I think it was Scott Brack went up there and said he was very impressed. I'm still waiting to go up there, and I probably need to do that here shortly. All right, any follow-up questions with Chris? If not, we have one more item on our agenda that's important regarding everything. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, you guys. See you later.
Tim, I can turn over to you and talk about CDRA funds and what we've learned about their availability and restrictions and other piece of information.
Okay, I provided a letter or memo to each of you about this that summarizes this information. I'm going to go through it very quickly, and I want to have obviously conversation and your input on the projects. But I included the plans and the areas where we received the funds from the county. Back in 1990 and 1997, the Fort Union area was created in the county, as well as the Cottonwood Corporate Center. Those two redevelopment areas were created. And there were a number of projects identified in those plans. I've attached the plans that you can look over if you want. They're pretty in-depth. But it talked about all of all the things that were to be accomplished with the use of tax increment financing. Back in 2015, the funds were provided to the city to the CDRA. The funds were delineated in the amounts in each of the areas. So for example, in the Fort Union area, that was the larger tax increment amount, about 1.5 million of the increment was generated from that Fort Union area, and then about 450,000 was generated in the Cottonwood corporate area. And so we are looking at the projects that we would propose. Mike Johnson and I have sat down and walked through some of these, and that's what I want to share with you and want your input. Keep in mind, as the Kyle Fielding report that we submitted to you stated, if we're looking at spending funds outside of these areas, we need to go back to the taxing entity committee. That's a committee way back that was formulated to approve these plans, and the committee would have to buy off on anything outside of what was identified in the plans. So let me share my screen with you. Oh, and the other thing with the taxing entity committee, I've been before them many times. I kind of know what they're going to be asking for in these areas. They're probably going to be wanting the projects to tie closer to the areas. They're also probably going to be asking about whether we're going to include an affordable housing component. I've never not been asked that as I've gone to the committee. They're also probably going to be asking about how this enhances economic development and the tax base. Those are the types of things that they'll be sharing. So I'm going to share my screen and show you the projects that we would recommend. Once again, the CDRA board can give us input on this, but this is what, based on the criteria and the things that we've talked about that we're looking at. So first of all, we feel like there needs to be,
Can you enlarge that?
oh,
for
yes,
us?
I can do that. Sorry. Is that large enough or do you need it bigger?
That's good for me.
Okay. So
Can you make it
we-
bigger, please? Sorry.
a little bit bigger? Okay, just a minute. That better? Okay.
Yes,
So
that's much better.
we would propose an affordable housing set aside from these two areas. The total amount that we are looking at is 1.7 million, but we've broken them out by area. 77% roughly it would be the Fort Union area, 23% based on the amounts that were carried over from the county. And we would propose affordable housing set aside. You may ask the question, what would we do with that? There's a number of things that we could do towards enhancing affordable housing in our community. One option, and we can talk more about this, but having funds to catalyze this would be an important thing. One would be possibly looking at partnering with nonprofit housing organizations to do some affordable housing repairs for individuals that are in the AMI. There's a number of different things that we can look at, but we think that's an important component of what we should do with this. Then in the Fort Union area, you see these two areas that I've highlighted. These are reimbursements that actually could occur probably today if the council CDRA board, I'm not saying today, but if you wanted to move forward with this, we could take the 80,000 and the 22,000 and reimburse the city and the general fund for work that's already been done in these areas that were eligible under the project area report. So there's those two reimbursements, and then other things that we've identified is a trails, a Union Park Hillside Trail. We've talked about this before. This would be eligible in the area. We would have to get tech approval, a park center multi-use path in the project area, which we have cost estimates because these are things that we presented to you for possible grant applications. And then another aspect is a mid-block 13th East pedestrian crossing to connect as well, to provide an amenity and a crossing for individuals. All of these are real close to this project area and we feel like could fit within the plans that were originally proposed with the tech approval. We also proposed administrative costs and also a property area improvement fund to enhance any site improvements that any of the businesses in that area could look at, include facade improvements or site pedestrian enhancements. So that would be the area of the Fort Union. Then Cottonwood Corporate, what we would look at is a reimbursement of some of the work in the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail and also infrastructure in the right of way. Those amounts would be 105,000 and 187,000, which the total for both areas would be a reimbursement to the general fund or to the city of around 400,000. And then the council could decide on what they do with that. And that's something that could occur fairly quickly without even having to go to the tech committee. Some of the other projects, well, that's another project would be, no, those are the two projects in that area based on the funds. So anyway, with that, we would have an affordable housing component, a trails and recreation component, a infrastructure right-of-way component, and then property improvement funds as well as project administration. So that's what we would recommend and think that is a good option for us to take to the taxing entity committee based on the criteria they look at. But we'd love input from the council or with the CDRA board on this.
Do all of those add up to the total amount of these funds?
Yeah, about approximately 1.7 million, yes.
So Tim, maybe you can ask the question, and I know we've asked this before, but I think it's appropriate to have that clarification. When we met with the county to have these transferred to us, well, it's probably been, what, a couple years ago.
6 years ago. I think it was 6 years ago, 2005, wasn't it?
Oh, it was after that.
Oh, it was after that. Okay.
Yeah, it was after that. We met with, I think it was.
I think
Stuart.
about 2015.
But I know Mike Shelton was heavily involved with this because part of the condition on approvals of the Canyon Center project was that this money would come to the city for use within the city. And so, and we've talked about this before, this isn't new to anyone. But what this is, I guess, clarification of what we all, I guess, misunderstood. Is that fair to say that? No.
Let me see. Well, I wasn't at that meeting, so I'd have to get someone else to, but they provided these funds and there was some discussion about having them go to, if I recall, go towards Canyon Center, but that was pulled out and was determined
Right.
not to.
It
And
was
so
pulled
that's
out,
why,
and
what's
we
that?
could, and it was pulled out with kind of a informal discussion. I don't know how formal it was, that we could use it. One of the primary things was property acquisition in other areas. And that was, but again, so this has been verified. This is what it is. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, this is what, I mean, these are projects. I mean, we verified the amounts, what was brought over, the 1.7 million approximately. And then we know what the project area defines as projects. We would go back to the tech and make sure whatever the council wants to do, make sure they are comfortable with what we are spending the funds on.
Have we spent any of the amount that's been transferred over the last couple of years?
I believe we have, I believe that there has been some of the funds spent, and I don't know if it was part of the administration of the Canyon Center area, but there was some of the funds spent. So the amount that we originally received is not the amount that we have in place now, and I believe some of that was part of the
Right.
administration.
And that's why I asked the question. It seems like the amount transferred over was higher.
Mhm.
So if we spent some of it on the Canyon Center, so we spent inappropriately?
I haven't looked into that. I'm not sure what it was spent on.
We got a study done by Jason Birmingham's firm showing the benefit of the Canyon Center project to these two other project areas. So that may have been the basis for any expenditure for administration or whatever of the Canyon Center project.
So, and so the Canyon Center project is outside these two project areas. So are we okay?
Like,
Yes.
like I say, the Birmingham study showed enough of a tie between the Canyon Center project and these two project areas to support that benefiting the Canyon Center project would benefit these other two project areas.
But not to be argumentative, but back then, I don't believe that we were talking about the tie-in. We thought we had, I thought, it was my interpretation from the conversation, being a meeting with the county, that they would come to us and we could use them within the city. But if these are the facts and that's the opinion legally, then yeah.
That's, Mayor, my understanding is 100% right along your understanding. And I thought the memo that we received from legal counsel about this was that if we took it outside of these project areas, that we just had to get approval from the taxing entities. I spoke to the members of Salt Lake County at the time that helped us through the Canyon Center and getting this money back for these project areas, and they agreed with our opinion, Mayor. I thought what we'd be looking at today, Tim, was what, and I think Councilmember Bracken brought this up a couple of weeks ago, which was what improvements have we made in the Canyon areas that we can get reimbursed for, which I think are your yellow highlights here, these
Yep.
three.
Correct.
I thought we had more than that based on a discussion we had this morning. And so I apologize for that, or for.
I think it was about $600,000 worth.
It's about 400,000
Oh.
of what we've done in both of these areas that we feel we could get reimbursed for. So it's 400,000.
Yeah, so my initial reaction here, Tim, is appreciate you putting this list together and ideas for the project areas, but I could be supportive of a few of the things on your list that are not highlighted yellow, but to be honest, with a large sum of money that we could utilize for something big, I don't get really excited about what's on the list personally.
Okay.
But to me, I think it's a no-brainer personally that those areas that we've already expended funds that we can reimburse ourselves and then have that discretion in the general fund. I think that's, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me to do that.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about some of the work that we had done on 3000 East that we might have been able to get reimbursed for, the overlay. I thought there were some other things.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one should be that at the bottom of the screen right now. One of those. The last one, the 187, is what I thought that was.
That's all it is 187.
Yeah, that is it right there. Yep. And I believe that was the city's match. I believe that's correct. That was the city's portion of that project.
yeah, Holiday paid portion of that as well.
Yeah, but that is the amount, and that's what we would reimburse.
I did notice from the map that you drew that the median on going down Hollow Mill Drive was also, I mean, it looked like they were very specific and that they included that road down to the trail coming out. That median and all that was also included in the area. So I guess it would be a matter of looking at any infrastructure improvements or items along that section of road as well.
Yeah, and we've looked at that. We'll look again closer, but I believe that's the amounts that we've identified are the amounts that we feel we can reimburse based on what we spent in those areas.
Well, there may be some things planned in the future that, like Christine refers to, that we may want to consider out of here that would have been funded out of the general fund that can, again, free up money in the general fund to consolidate into larger sums to do something. But
Well,
Is there anything, like, what about the bathrooms at the park or the shade structure or any of those things, enhancements in the project area? Is that too far afield?
it's
Talking at Ferguson or where?
No, I'm talking about
Mountain View.
Mountain View. I mean,
we had track funds that did the pavilion down there.
but I thought we paid, did we not pay for the shade structure and some of
That's
the?
why I'm saying that shade structure was a track funded, but it probably had required a match. And that's I think that's,
There was a match on that. I can't recall the amount.
now there's usually a minimum of 10, 20% or something of that. And even the canal trail that we
Yeah.
just did, there's match on that.
Canal Trail, Mayor, our match came from another funding source.
Did it? Okay,
There was no out of pocket on that one.
okay.
So my question is the 400 or was it 600
400.
discrepancy, where did that come and go? Because I'm kind of coming in this on from a different angle than those that have been around a little longer.
Well-
Go ahead, Mayor.
I was saying that when I looked at this earlier, I maybe added one more number in there, that projects that we've already funded that we could reimburse that are projects that were constructed within those areas, and we could reimburse our general fund, and that money would then become available to use at our discretion. And
I
I
see.
had 600, but they correct me, it's actually 400, unless there's something else that we identify.
And all of you, what we could do if the council wants to give direction for the reimbursement of these 4 projects that we know, we can make that happen, and those funds would be available as you go through the budget process, through the budget process this spring. we can look at other aspects and even bring this back and have more of a conversation, because we aren't in a major hurry. And if you have other ideas that we could put towards, we've tried to identify projects that are fairly close to the project area that we could either reimburse or do.
Yeah.
If there's other ideas, I'd love those ideas, and we can definitely take more time if we need to, because this
Well,
is
to me,
not.
to me, it's a no-brainer that we're going to want to do that based upon the assumptions of this being the direction we have to go, because we don't lose anything. We get it back in general fund and we can repurpose it where we want, and it gets, again, the direction we want. One last question on the affordable housing. You have a recommendation of $320,000 to come out of this. Is that a requirement somewhere, or is that just?
It's not necessarily a requirement of these areas. It's just every time that I've gone to the taxing entity committee and we've looked at modifying areas and plans, that they have always asked for that. Not saying that they will, but I can almost guarantee that they will, especially the county. And so I think it would be a good thing to move, at least to have some funds available to look at some different programs to assist people with affordable housing needs.
But it has to be in those project areas.
No, not affordable housing's different. Affordable housing that is created in a redevelopment area, that can go throughout the whole city. That's the difference with affordable housing in redevelopment areas. That can go for needs in the whole city.
So any amount we allocate in that can be anywhere within the city.
Sure, absolutely.
And you can have 20% of the current balance of this. But if we reimburse ourselves and that goes down, I mean, it's not a set thing.
No, I mean, it can be 10% if you want. I just feel like 20% is typically what redevelopment areas are received now, but you can definitely weigh in on that and give us direction.
Yeah.
What was the housing? Do we have an example of a housing set aside for any of our project areas? I'm used to doing 10%, right? So I'm used to doing 10%. 20% seems high. The last case that we looked at over in the gravel pit, it seemed like the council was supportive of what the developer did on their own without us having to subsidize their efforts, right? So it seems to me that where we can, we want to do that. I'd want to know with some certainty what that money would be used for, because when I look at 340 or even half of that, I don't know what it could be used for. Could that be used to help people's electrical bills, right? And seniors. I mean, but that's not a housing set aside. That's something different, right? So.
For example, what I have seen really good use of these funds for is working with a nonprofit housing provider to provide housing rehab work if there's needs for people that are low to moderate income. That's what some of these funds could go towards.
Like building access into a home, or
What's that?
doing modifications to someone who's become disabled and
Exactly.
low income, that type of a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, currently we were part of a project with the county, which Community Development Block Grant Funds, that does a lot of that. So it's those same types of programs, and there's a dozen nonprofits that they contribute to do that. Yeah.
Just be aware it's 7 o'clock, just,
Oh, thanks, Doug.
Yeah, you're so right. I saw that a moment ago. To me, it's a no-brainer that we want to reimburse ourselves on those projects that have already been funded, but it seems like we're rushing into it just a little bit. We may want to come back one more time and have a discussion as part of our overall budget process. I think it's real appropriate to include that in that area, even though they're two separate paths that we have to go down. Yeah.
Yeah, Mayor, what I would suggest is we could tentatively plan on this reimbursement in the budget process. So you would deliberate on it in the budget process, because you're approving the CDRA budget this upcoming year, as well as the budget of the general fund. So we could propose that in the budget, and then you'd have the chance to deliberate on it through that if you would like. That's what I would recommend.
That makes sense to me, but I would ask you to take the microscope one more time and see if there's any other projects that would be included that maybe we've
Okay.
covered.
And I might also take a look at that list that Mike Johnson included from the PTOS and maybe asterisk any of these projects that were on that list. I think the Home Depot trail was on that list. And that would be,
It's on here too, yeah.
Well, it's behind Target is what it is.
or
Yeah.
sorry, Target. I don't know why I said Home Depot, sorry.
Yeah, no,
Because they're right there too.
Yeah.
They are. But yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And then I'd also maybe take a look at that list and see if any of those ideas that they had were in the project area, you know, the pollinator garden or whatever, could that be combined with the Union Park Hillside Trail? Can you know, I don't know. I might be a little bit more creative to maybe get me personally excited about the options, because we have this money, and I want to be super jazzed about these great things that we'd be using the money for, but that's just me.
And Councilmember Peterson, Doug, you know, this is down in your area, so you want to pay close attention to some of those ideas, just like we worked on Bonneville Shoreline, those things. This hunk of this is your district down there, and you're going to want to take a look at that as.
Definitely. They all always catch my eye, even though the city as a whole.
Yep.
But definitely, I think that we've already spoken about a lot of these, so I think we just need to prioritize and see how much we can get out of what we've got.
So Doug, I think you've summarized it well. Let's make this part of our budget discussion. I think fundamentally those that are already identified, with another close look at a couple more. I think if there's something within the list from PTOS or from the council that they're aware of, now's the time we want to consider it. Yeah. And Tally in District 3, Cottonwood Corporate, with that trail that runs along there, and there's been some issues historically, we may want to look at that as well. I know I petitioned years ago when I was a council member about some landscape buffers and green screen because of some lawsuits and questions along the Cottonwood Corporate Trail. So
Yeah, keep that dialed.
yeah. All right. We do need to approve. Oh no, that'll be approved automatically through the process. Okay.
Just looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting and go to our business meeting, correct?
You know, that would be a great idea.
I think that's what we should do, and I'll move to that effect.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the CDRA meeting and we reconvene in 5 minutes, which will be 7:10, our City of Cottonwood Heights business meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
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 More importantly, any opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. See you in 5 minutes. Thank you.